Let's call the meeting to order. Everyone rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Any changes to the agenda?
Under administration, we'd like to give a brief update to the council related to ordinances related to recreational cannabis.
Okay. That's just under reports, right?
Yep, under administration.
Okay.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Josh.
Second.
Second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have an agenda. Okay. We have a presentation tonight. Jane Stone. Jane started with the City of Elko New Market Police Department as a part-time records technician in June of 2011. She oversaw the data entry for the police department, or for the police and fire department's records, and kept both departments in compliance with state laws. Along with this responsibility, she was tasked with CJIS compliance and maintaining all the state's data practices protocols. While working part-time for our community, she also served full-time for Rice County Sheriff's Office, where she performs many of the same functions. The City of Elko New Market recognizes Jane and thanks her for 11 years of dedicated and valuable service to the citizens of the community through her hard work with the police department. She's presented with this plaque as a small token of our appreciation for her service to the community. You'll be greatly missed. Anyone here for public comment? Commissioner.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, everybody. Tom Wolf, Scott County Commissioner. Just a couple things tonight. The county fair is on today through Sunday, started yesterday. The Ren Fest opens up in about 2 or 3 weeks. We're kicking around the marijuana ordinance. I'm kind of in the camp where it's here. What are we going to do about it? You know, it's whether it's now or in a year or so. So anyhow, so we're kind of wrestling with that. And then County 91, they're repaving that. It's looking pretty good so far. So I don't know if anybody's been on it, but it's really a pretty nice road now. So other than that, if anybody has any questions.
When you say kicking around the ordinance, what are you guys
Well,
contemplating?
our planning commission would like to put a pause on it for a moratorium for 1.5 years, and the few commissioners are in the camp of, it's like fireworks. You know, if you live in River Falls or in Hastings, you can go across the river and buy those. You might, I don't know, and you probably think different, but we're losing 175, 200 million bucks a year on fireworks taxes. They're coming here. Anyhow, Wisconsin's getting them. So, yeah, that's where it's at. But it's coming. You know, I don't like it either way, but it's, you know, going to be much like alcohol. You can't just go and do it anywhere. So, anyhow, unless you're at a concert. So, all right.
Appreciate it, Commissioner.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak under public comment? All right, we'll close public comment. Anything on consent anyone has questions on or would like pulled?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Josh, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have no public hearings, so we'll jump into general business.
First item is Firehouse Grill LLC events. The Firehouse Grill is requesting approval of an outdoor concert and event permit for their 10-year anniversary, and they're also requesting as part of the event a temporary expansion of their liquor service area. This is an item that would normally be on consent, but because the owner is a member of the council, we have to place it on the general business for approval. It's been reviewed by staff and is recommended for approval.
So are we okay with only 2 voting members?
Because it's a majority of the quorum present.
That is a problem, council present, or? Council present, you're right, so it's,
So Josh and I are the only council present that count? That's good to know. All right. Should we should we discuss
Split
this? Is
vote
there
kind
a
of screws this up, huh?
presentation or anything?
When is the date of this, event?
August 12th.
August 12th. Motion to approve resolution 23-48. Can we do them together, or should we do them?
We can.
separate? Motion to approve resolution 23-48 and, dash 49.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All abstained?
Aye.
All right. Passes. Got one more general business item.
There we go. Okay. During an unrelated code enforcement sweep by community development staff noticed a recently constructed fence and shed. However, they had not recalled issuing a permit for either. Staff visibly noticed that the fence and shed were also placed within a drainage and utility easement, which requires a separate encroachment agreement with the city, in addition to any necessary permits. Fence permits are required by the city, and sheds may require a permit depending on size, but still must meet setbacks listed in city code. Staff have verified that the fence was constructed without a permit, and that both the shed and parts of the fence were placed in an unpermitted location on city-owned property. Staff sent a letter to the property owner notifying him that the fence and shed must be relocated, and that a permit and encroachment agreement are still required to be applied for. This is the property we're discussing. The large portion here is city-owned Outlot A. The city council has indicated in the past a desire to keep the possibility for a connection to the Woodcrest neighborhood to the north open. This would be the means of connecting those two neighborhoods. The development predates any current staff, but our city engineer's opinion on the rear property line's design are as follows. The open water areas are stormwater management ponds. Engineer Revering's opinion is that the property lines were held back to make room for the city access to these ponds for maintenance, also for maximizing storage during extreme events and serving as a buffer. Another opinion from the city engineer is that the developer placed the rear lot lines to make the parcels meet minimum area requirements while maximizing space for ponding. The final pond grading design followed layout of the lot lines, so they left as much flexibility as possible to avoid rework of any of the lot layouts or losing any lots. Here's another image showing the pictometry, and then a highlighted areas depict the encroaching structures which are located on city property. The shed does not meet necessary setbacks for an accessory structure, which is 10 feet from the rear and side property lines, in addition to it being located on city property. After the letter was received by the property owner from city staff, the property owner contacted the city's police department to learn more about why they had received the letter. The police department referred them back to the community development staff, who informed them of why the letter was sent. During conversations with the property owner, it was revealed that the property owner knew a permit was required, but chose to forego applying for such a permit in an effort to increase the area of the backyard for the child to play in. The fence was constructed outside the limits of the owner's property, encroaching into a city-owned outlot behind the property. The fence was professionally installed, so a survey was done to determine property lines, which would have shown that part of the fence would be constructed on city-owned property and definitely in that drainage and utility easement. The property owner has since agreed to apply for any necessary permits and encroachment agreement and has submitted all necessary documents to do so. The property owner is still seeking permission, however, to leave the fence and the shed in the current location, which encroach into city-owned Outlot A, Windrose 8th Edition, which has the storm water management ponds. Staff informed the property owner that the approval of any encroachments into city-owned property requires city council approval. The property owner was also informed that staff's recommendation to the city council would be to remove all improvements from city property
and deny any encroachment into city-owned property. The property owners still wish to move forward with the requested encroachment agreement to leave their fence and shed in their current unpermitted location. Here's the survey on the left, shows you the current unpermitted placement with the area highlighted. That's city property is in the highlighted area. On the right is the permitted placement, what I could approve today without city approval for the fence. That's the permitted placement along the property line. At the June 8th City Council meeting, the property owner was present to request an encroachment agreement from the City Council to allow the improvements located on the city property to remain in place. Following the discussion, the City Council agreed that they were willing to discuss the topic further. Part of the rationale for the request presented to the City Council at the meeting by the property owner was that the encroachment into the city-owned property was necessary for the purpose of building a future 20-foot by 20-foot accessory dwelling unit, or an ADU. So an ADU is a secondary dwelling unit located on the same property as the main dwelling unit. They're an option for families who wish to care for relatives, such as the elderly or those with a disability. That makes traditional housing for those relatives harder to obtain. So staff investigated the potential placement of one of these 20 by 20 ADUs within the property to see if it would be feasible with current property line boundaries. And staff were able to incorporate an example of what that looks like here on the next slide. On the right there, so it's a little over 20 by 20 actually. So there's actually room to make it larger than 20 by 20, but it would fit on the property as is. So due to this possibility of constructing the ADU on the site with no encroachment into city-owned property, staff believes there to be no reason to approve the current encroaching structures. The City Council is being asked to provide feedback and direction to staff regarding the request for an encroachment agreement. Staff's main concern with approving the encroachment into city-owned property is the placement of structures on property not owned by the applicant and that precedence that it sets for the rest of the city. It's likely that other property owners would have an interest in enlarging their own property simply by extending structures such as a fence past their property line onto another party's property without obtaining any approval or permits from the property owner. Staff and city attorney's recommendation would be to have the property owner remove any and all improvements that are located on city-owned property and deny any encroachment agreement into city-owned property. City Council is being asked to provide feedback and direction to staff regarding this request. If you have any questions.
So I understood right that they're, with the current lot lines the way it's drawn, there's no reason they could not build the ADU, correct?
Correct.
And the argument that was made as to why this was done was to do the ADU, to be able to do that at some point, correct?
At June 8th, that was,
That's what I recalled as well.
The property also indicated that the size of the yard in some manner posed a safety issue for their child if the fence was not
Sure.
placed
Yeah,
on
you're right.
the city property.
Council, what do you guys think?
Aside from the precedence issue, I mean, what are the concerns of approving it or allowing it to stay? Take the precedent issue off the table. I mean, what concerns would we have as a city?
It could pose complications and hassle if we're doing any sort of maintenance on our property. Even though encroachment agreements generally state that if it's in the way, we can take it out. It's your problem, not our cost. In practice, it does create significant hassles with regards to dealing with the property owners at the time, which may not be the property owner who's installing it today. It may be in the way if we decide we need to make improvements to that area for drainage, to provide for additional drainage. The council in the past has identified a desire to keep open an option to possibly extend like an emergency access into the Windrose neighborhood. In order to do that, and still maintain stormwater drainage, we may want some of that, may want to expand or alter the pond in some fashion or some other unforeseen circumstance in the future. So that would be one example.
And, I mean, and so that was it kind of leads into my next question. Can we legally approve anything and tie it to the specific owner of the property? Or is it's for the property in perpetuity regardless?
I could be talked into this, to doing this. I don't mean to interrupt you.
I was the one who went to his house when he described why he did what he did. Yeah, I was just gonna add some
ahead.
input that I believe is relevant. Can you hear me? That I believe is relevant is the property next to him that you can see. That owner is waiting to see what happens because they also want to put a fence in. And that was one of the big issues, is if it's allowed to be back, then that owner, because you can see where the lot line comes in, he would also only be able to add his fence to the lot line. And I know that was one of the issues between the person who applied and his neighbor as well. FYI, is, because I believe it is relevant, because his neighbor next door wants a fence as well. Just for your input on it. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. I mean, I guess I'd be willing to listen to be talked into it, to approving it. I don't see a huge reason as to why we should. I mean, the ADU is a legitimate concern. It sounds like that's been addressed. I don't know. I don't really know of a good reason why we should. I don't know. Where are you guys at?
I believe that if the ADU can fit on the lot with us not approving the encroachment and asking them to put the fence back, that's what we should do, because otherwise other people will try to do the same thing.
Yeah. Josh?
Yeah, no, and I'm torn. I think I'm typically follow the guidelines. We have it there for a reason, but then, parts of me listens with my heart at times, and the kiddo with a disability,
Yeah.
that just gets me. So, and I don't really care about the ADU piece as much, just because we don't know if they'll ever build it, and we don't know. I mean, that's a definite what if type of situation. And if they decided to in the future and it wasn't big enough, they could get a variance somehow and deal with it then. So I guess I have less concerns about that. I mean, I'm not strong either way. If it wasn't gonna be an issue, that's why I was asking, aside from precedents, if it's not an issue, and I guess then my follow-up to maybe Chief's point is, would we have an issue if the neighbor then did the exact same thing? Is that gonna encroach on what we need to have that space for, and is that gonna impact future stuff, improvements, whatever it might be?
I can't give a 100% answer. Maybe Rich could. Corey definitely could. So when they do maintenance to this pond, to me, it makes the most sense that they would, if they have a truck or something, to come in here.
They'll go in multiple places because they're removing vegetation, volunteer vegetation, and, they can't float in the air, they gotta get down to them. Someday we'll be needing to get in there and remove sediment, and, that's hard enough without having nowhere to go, so.
Andrea, on the precedence issue, there's usually two types of precedents. There's political precedents, where pressure is applied to the council that way, and then there's legal precedents. Could you respond on the legal precedents that may or may not be there related to this?
I don't believe there's probably a legal precedence to this, but with the neighbor next door, it will be difficult from a political perspective to establish why you wouldn't allow that. I mean, that person bought that property with a child, knowing the size of the yard and the backyard and what it looks like. You will get pushback from other neighbors on this. And I can honestly say, none of the cities we work for will allow any sort of encroachment into city property. They might allow it for drainage and utility easements and that sort of thing, but it's unheard of to allow anything on city property.
Is anyone overly supportive of this, of approving this?
I mean, and we won't just be giving away the land either, right, I assume, or would the owner buy the land from the city if, let's say, we heard that it would make sense or be okay for it and it wouldn't impact what we needed it to? I mean, we wouldn't just be handing this over, correct, or?
They're requesting an encroachment agreement, which is they're basically asking for rent-free ability to place their stuff on city property indefinitely.
would the city be interested in selling it if, I mean, or doing something, going down that path to, I mean,
It's an option.
because is that similar to what we did across the street or down the road a little bit with the trails and stuff? I mean,
I asked the same
similar?
thing.
We did, but in that particular situation, the lots were designed in such a fashion that it actually did impact what people were able to do with their rear yards. So it wasn't, and so there was more to it. I don't know that it's an apples to apples.
I'm not getting a good vibe of one way or the other, so I might be in the minority anyway, so.
So you want to approve it?
Well, I mean,
I mean, talk us into approving
no,
it.
I mean, and I don't have enough to talk anybody into anything at this point either, so that's how,
May I
that's
say
how
something?
neutral I am.
May I say something?
Sure.
Sure. Gene Mager, 41 West Lewis Street. I just want to say this whole thing is part of the culture I talked about with people thinking they're entitled to do whatever they want. I mean, he was aware of things, and I'm not going to blame anybody. I'm just going to state what I feel. I think this is more than encroachment. I think you shouldn't even consider encroachment. Really, I think you should consider criminal charges. I mean, there's things, yeah, I'm not gonna go any further. That's my opinion, yeah.
Fair enough.
That's, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't want to have a split vote on this. So,
Well, I'm not going to, I mean, so.
I mean, talk us into it if you want to.
No, I mean, and I guess the only other hesitation I might have, I assume that the applicant knew that we were meeting at 6 o'clock tonight, not 7 at the normal business time, and
Yep.
was invited down, and, okay.
Is this something we need a motion on? And there's no resolution or anything?
Given that this is a specific request for action by the council, or we're looking for direction on whether or not to prepare the action, staff would prefer that there's a
A motion. Does anyone want to make a motion on this? If not, it will just fail.
So the motion would be to,
To approve the, oh yeah, that's a good point.
It would be motion to direct staff
Yeah.
to prepare an encroachment agreement for the shed and and I suppose if there's no motion in favor, it wouldn't proceed due to lack of a motion. But it would be,
You'd probably be clearer to make a motion to provide direction to the city to not go down the path of an encroachment agreement, because that's the direction we think is
the
best.
property owner's gonna want
Right,
a
clear,
answer,
right,
yeah.
otherwise it'll come back, in 6 months, 3 months, a year, whatever, or could come back, yeah.
so I would make a motion to not approve the encroachment agreement.
To deny the, okay.
Deny.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed, all right. All right, next thing is we have a closed meeting. So before we close, before I read this, do we need motions to close the meeting, or can I just close the meeting?
No, we need a motion to close the meeting to develop and read off what is actually on the agenda.
Yeah. We have a closed meeting tonight. Tonight's closed meeting is to develop or consider an offer for the purchase of real property located at 251 Main Street, Elko, New Market, pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3. Persons, well, I don't have to read who's here until we come back, right? All right, so any motions to close?
Motion to close the meeting?
So motion by Kate,
Second.
second by Josh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we have a closed meeting. We're reopening the meeting. We'll jump into reports.
Under administration, we wanted to give council an update with regards to recreational cannabis, especially since there's been a heck of a lot of media coverage on it. If we go back to early June meeting, the council had given us some direction related to a moratorium, possibly pursuing a moratorium to bring back for council consideration. As staff was working on that and following the direction from council, staff consulted with our legal counsel. And their take on the benefit of a moratorium, which, as the council discussed, would only apply to zoning, permissive for the use for recreational cannabis, not to low dose, edibles, things like that. That the value of the moratorium was very limited. And such a moratorium wouldn't affect the other policy items that we discussed that evening, such as consumption in public spaces, parks, and things like that. Given that, staff did not see the value of doing the moratorium. We had advised the council of that individually, but we felt for purposes of transparency and for clear direction that we should mention it to council and make sure that we have clear direction from council that that is the council's intent, that we are not pursuing a moratorium at this time.
It's my intent.
That's my intent.
Absolutely. Do we need to or want to, so yes, absolutely on the moratorium. It's,
No.
no, I mean,
No.
absolutely, yes, says
No
for
moratorium.
scrapping the moratorium talk, it
Yes.
just seems pointless and I still can't get other cities to explain why they think it's valuable.
Politics.
But is there anything we wanted to talk to about the consumption side of things? So we have, we have 4
Yes.
days, so.
Yes, so on the flip side, we do need to have discussions related to consumption in public places. Those are other policy issues that cities are dealing with that aren't directly related to the moratorium. We do plan on coming back to the council on those topics to get direction on those various items. So the questions that are, the big ones that are out there are consumption, where is it okay and where is it not? How are we gonna handle that? The second one is gonna be, do we wanna pursue, cannabis muni or not? That was an item that was brought up, but we should get clear direction because that will require some level of research and effort. Other items, quite honestly, we may need to figure out over time. There's discussions of potential nuisance issues associated with the activity. What happens if I'm on my deck and we're really smoking it up? How does it relate into potential nuisance issues with the neighbors and things like that? And so those are items I think we can and probably should wait on until we see how things start to develop. There isn't any history at this point in time. But those three items, we do feel we need to come back to in relatively short order and get some direction on where we're gonna go with it.
Okay.
And there's nothing now, if we don't start implementing or enforcing stuff come 8/1 and we decide we want to really crack down on, the second meeting in August, we can still do that fully and, be okay.
Yep, it's not like a land use item where there's like, maybe a grandfathered right or anything like that. This would be regulation in public, these would be like regular ordinances. We can change them when we want to. My impression in talking with council people is that those items, whether, if you can smoke on the sidewalk for 2 weeks, it's not gonna be the end of the world necessarily. But our plan would be to come back on those items just to get some direction at either the August 11th or August 24th meeting with regard, if there's a priority on the public consumption of it or public use. Andre's office already has ordinances that they've drafted for other communities that could be put in place right away. And maybe we could have a little discussion now. Would you prefer that we bring a draft ordinance that you can decide to vote up or down or modify? Or do you want to have the discussion on whether or not we should even draft it?
I want to have discussion whether or not we should even draft it.
Okay, so we can bring that back. High prior, August 10th, absolutely for sure, or depending on staff workload, it could go to August 24th.
Is that good?
And I'm very interested in learning more about the municipal run.
Yep, and the interesting part is I've had discussions with a lot of my peers. That discussion is primarily limited to small cities for obvious reasons with the limit in current
12,000.
statute of 12, you have to have one if you're under, you can limit it to one if you choose to under 12,500. But the statute also saying you can only have one license per premise. The big cities are basically excluded from that possibility consideration. So right now it's a small city thing and I have not, there's a lot of talk about the concept, but I don't know that anybody's done a ton of work at this point.
Okay. Anything else for administration?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anything to pass on from Public Works?
Nope. Oh, quick item. City of Cedar Lake, Credit River, our neighbor to the north, has come down to talk to us about what does it take to build a public works department from scratch. And so Corey and I met with their city administrator earlier this week for some amount of time to kind of talk through our experiences, lessons learned, opinions on how to maybe approach particular items, so just being of assistance to our neighbors.
Police.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I do have a little bit of a report for you. Starting today, as a matter of fact, probably within about 2 hours, the Sheriff's Department has modified their response protocol for when there are no Elko New Market officers on duty. So, starting today, they've modified the dispatch procedure and protocol where they will no longer be responding to non-emergency, non-in-progress calls when there are no officers present. It's a sign of the times, a sign of everything that's going on in law enforcement. As you know, we lost 2 officers, which greatly increased our gaps in coverage, which doubled the amount of calls already that the Sheriff's Department has responded to in the city over last year already. So it kind of opened the sheriff's eyes, and it does not just apply to Elko New Market, it applies to the entire county. Shakopee, Savage, there's times when the Sheriff's Department responds to those cities to handle calls when their departments are not, there's not no one there, they're just not able to respond. So the Sheriff's Department will still be responding to all medical calls, all in-progress calls, meaning whatever they're being called for is going on at that time. Anything where evidence collection is needed, or any unknown call or 911 call that comes in. We don't see a huge impact in the number of calls. The amount of non-in-progress calls that people call for in the middle of the night when we might not have coverage is very small, but it will affect the response times and whether or not an officer comes to your house when you call. It'll be prioritized. Is this something that happened hours before? And is this something that can wait until an Elko New Market officer comes back on duty? Which could be 10 hours, could be 12 hours, could be 6, could be 3. It just depends on our staffing at that particular time. So I'm just letting you know of that new procedure. Again, I do not believe it's going to have a huge impact on what our citizens are going to see, but it is going to really affect on some calls. There might not be a response. Where you call, want to report a fraud that happened the day before or something, you might have to wait half a day or hours until the next officer gets on duty. Protocol for us has changed where when an officer comes on duty from a gap in coverage, they'll look at our computer. We had to develop with the county a procedure where those calls will be pending and waiting for us. We've never done that before because they were responding to everything. So there's some good out of it where we'll get more truer, accurate stats of all the calls that go on in our city. But the officer will see the calls stacked or pending, prioritize them, and respond. So if there are 3 or 4 calls, it might be a half a day before you would see a response from an Elko New Market officer. So it's a change. Again, I don't see it having a huge impact. This is coming, we started it at the beginning of the summer when we lost our officers and staff. Procedures going into effect now as we're coming fully staffed now. And Zach, at the end of this month, will be coming off here in a week or so. And then we'll be back to where we were 9-10 months ago when we lost our first officer for staffing. So that amount of time where we're not going to have an officer is going to really go down. And then as we add the 2024 officer that we're hiring for right now, and we have an ad for right now, and then if we can bring on our 2026 officer early, as we talked about at the last meeting, then that even goes down more, where we're not having officers even a smaller fraction of time.
Without giving any of the details, so I know when to go be obnoxious, how about how many hours a week are there of no officers on duty in town?
Right now, about 20 to 21. At different times, due to vacations and sick calls, it's a lot more than that. But, again, as we bring these officers online and get them on their own, that'll greatly come down to under 5, under 7.
Was the county gonna share this with the public, or are they putting out any information so the public knows anything?
Nope. It really, we're the only department that does not have staff 24/7. And when they go to back other agencies, it's because they're tied up and busy, and it doesn't impact those those communities as much. And then all the other communities, they have the sheriff's department anyways. Credit River was just brought up, you know, they pay for the sheriff's department to offer their services. So, I do not know of any press release or anything. It's really procedural for them a lot. And for them, their staffing issues have changed, and taking on our community more often places a burden on them as well. More calls for their agency. So, not that I know of. I haven't not heard that they're gonna do a press release or anything like that.
Is there something that we need to do to let our residents know?
Change the wording, should do?
Should do? Yeah.
Well, we're doing this for transparency, and if we felt there was an impact or something they should do different, we would let them know. If they need assistance, they're to call. There's nothing they can really do to make our officer come in earlier. Or, you know, any emergency call, they're protected.
No, I meant to let our community know that if they call, this might be the answer they get. If Scott County's not gonna come out, just so that they're aware.
It
that-
is, I've thought of that, like, I do not want to give any hint. I've been fighting for 4 years to get people to call 911 when they see or say something, you know? The percentage is so small, dispatch will advise them. There's no officer on duty right now. They should know when we're coming on, they'll be able to advise them. It doesn't change it, I don't want it to change anything for the community. I don't want them to only call Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 when I'm on, or we have more staffing. So I don't wanna confuse them that, thinking that there's no cops working or no one's coming when they call. So,
My personal opinion is if this was to happen today, and somebody was to call, and they talked to dispatch and said, I want to report a fraud case, happened to me yesterday, you know, and they're calling at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they say, you're gonna have to wait until 7 o'clock when a Newmark officer gets, I don't think they would think twice about it for the types of calls that we're talking about. If it's an issue of, there's a suspicious car, and it's sitting in our cul-de-sac, and it's really suspicious, the sheriff's office is still gonna respond. If it's I've heard a noise in my basement, I think there's somebody else, they're responding. These are the things that you're gonna have to wait until an officer is available anyways to
They're
come.
more administrative type
Yes,
stuff.
yep, taking a report, coming out, you know.
we've been fighting so hard. If you see something, say something. I don't even want them to hesitate and go, oh, I wonder if an officer's on, or what the response time. They'll know, they'll be communicated with. I just don't see, there's gonna be an impact on response time, but for non-emergence admin type stuff. And we're really kinda coming to what every other county in the state, especially more rural counties. And this is what I brought up. There are communities now that their police departments have disbanded, and they have nobody except for the sheriff's department, and they don't respond to non-emergency calls in those communities. And there's others, and my chief's meetings I've been hearing, where there's 3 officers, and due to their vacation and time that they work, there's 4 or 5 days response time. Which you're getting to kinda like Anchorage, Alaska, you know, where you call and in a week or 2, someone shows up.
Right.
And that's how dire it's been hit, these rural, small communities for police officers. So we're not there, but the sheriff, I think, was being very proactive in treating our community. It's not fair that they respond to everything in our community and not other communities. So they wanted to make it fair. They wanted to make the fair protocol and consistent protocol, and it was actually a proactive thing that if this is gonna happen more, he needs to go to his commissioners for more deputies to cover communities like ours, and this is a way to track that. So, I'm cautious about it because it really isn't gonna change much. Of the 30 calls this year, when I looked at those calls, it was 3 that they would've had a longer wait. And they really were kind of those calls where you go, yeah, it's not gonna hurt if you wait 4 or 5 hours. It's an inconvenience, but one, that time is gonna shrink now that we're staffing up and, you know, we get authorized for, and we got that public safety funding, and we get our numbers higher, that's gonna shrink down to 0, hopefully. But it's coming at a time, unfortunately, our situation precipitated it, and now as we're dealing with it, we should no longer need it, if that makes sense. Very temporary, very small, short time. So that's why we're not posting it, you know, because, one, we believe in transparency, but we also don't want to teletype that there are times where we don't have any law enforcement in our community as well.
All right.
So, that and Night to Nights next Tuesday. So there's, I think we're up to 10 parties. Did Stephanie tell you what the?
She hasn't told me.
Yeah, it's 8, 10 parties that we're gonna be at. All the staff are in except for, I think, 2. And we're gonna be out and about, going to the party, meeting the community. We have tattoos this year of our patches that the kids can put on, stickers and hats that we had last year, and glow bracelets and glow necklaces we're gonna be handing out. And can't wait to, get with the public. We haven't had anybody apply yet, but that's not uncommon. It doesn't close until the 18th of August. And then we have 2 interviews set up that will, early September, we'll need a council member to be a part of an interview panel. Fingers crossed. And then, again, unless you have questions, that's it.
Is there a general timeline on the night to night stuff? I had no idea when I filled out the application what the heck I was doing, so I just kind of made up a time. But is there a general time when it's supposed to start and kick off, or?
5:30, 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Our staff is gonna leave the PD at 5:30, or be ready to go at 5:30. And then the meetings all list the times they're going, but it's generally 6 to 8.
And will that,
And then
like,
some go
line
till
up,
9.
I guess, for lack of, or agenda, will that get out to those that have registered so that we know when to kind of expect?
We don't typically know. You stay longer, get held longer at ones, less at others. It's,
People put the times on the applications, because some of the parties start at 5:30, some put at 6, some 6:30,
Look at what I put. Okay.
just around that time. We just start driving around looking for parties, so. And we have assigned parties for different officers, so. And the fire department will be out as well.
Engineering,
No report.
all right. Community development,
Just note, we had a planning commission meeting this Tuesday, and there were 3 public hearings related to proposed developments of apartment building over by Firehouse Grill, and then residential development. So there's some people that came out for the residential development, but the planning commission recommendations will be to you next month.
overall, hearings went well, though?
I think so. Yeah.
additionally, I should point out that the posting, most recent posting for the planner position is closed. We had 5 applications. We'll be interviewing all 5, and we have interviews scheduled over the next coming weeks. So by the end of August, if we are able to identify somebody out of that group, we should be moving them on to background and the rest of the process.
All right. Anything for parks?
No.
No? CCEC, I think there were minutes in the
Yeah,
packet, weren't
our
there?
last meeting was just looking forward to the next year's fire rescue days and plans, suggestions.
Staff is going to be meeting with Councilmember Novak to begin discussions related to kind of the future format, composition of the CCEC, and begin discussing how we structure a conversation with the council related to the city's role in civic and community events later this year.
Yeah, Joe, you weren't at the last meeting. We authorized 100,000 to go to CCEC now, so.
Oh, that's great. I don't remember signing that, or anything, but,
We didn't need you.
no,
It's all
I
good.
outvoted.
Yep.
25.
25.
Whatever, I wasn't here. I don't get to say anything. All right, scale, there's nothing to report on scale unless you have anything. but
No, we don't meet in July,
meetings,
yeah.
so. I-35,
No meeting in July, maybe August too. I don't remember. I'll have to look.
any discussion by council?
Just quickly, the policy committees started for the league in Metro Cities, so I've been attending them remotely when possible. Was at a few, there's like 2 a week that I've been going to, and now they take a break for a month. There's some stuff in the Metro Cities transportation and general government that we will keep an eye on, road and bridge funding, building code stuff. I'm gonna annually poke at the residential program piece just to get people to fight
That's
back
what
on
you
that
do.
one. Annexation came up in a discussion at Metro Cities with Mike Lund talking about having conversations with the Minnesota Association of Townships. And I said, or referenced that we had met with them a year or something ago, just kind of getting preliminary discussions, so just keep us in the loop, and I'm sure we'd be happy to participate. There was some talk about water supply stuff and policies and whether it's a regional approach or whatever. I said, well, we're kind of in the middle of some stuff, so we might be interested in understanding what others think about that. There's a metropolitan agencies committee specifically.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
What are they talking about water supply?
It was just brought up with all the Blaine stuff and then the
Okay.
Lake Elmo stuff, and then a couple of them would like privately chat me or whatever and ask about our stuff. But just knowing that it's been a hot topic in the drought and all that stuff, so.
Okay.
And then I had to poke at them a little bit for the local control issue, how we talk out both sides of our mouth on a regular basis. Where we love local control, but then the state doesn't do enough in certain areas. And then open meeting law was the other discussion item that several cities were really gonna push to try to update and get technology to be allowed for open meeting laws so that we could actually have Zoom meetings and participate remotely outside of the few reasons why city council members could do it now, so I could see something potentially going there.
All right, any other discussion? Any motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Kate,
Second.
second by Josh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, meeting is adjourned.